UFC 309 going down this Saturday. How we doing, everybody? It's your boy, Young Pastey, breaking down UFC. We do this ish every single week. This time we got John the Bones Jones versus Stipe Miocic. This fight would have been great about 5 years ago, but better late than never, some would say, right? It's going down in Madison Square Garden, New York. New York, concrete jungle with green tomato. I'm going to be breaking down every single fight on the card. I'm going to give you a pick for every single fight and my prediction and my analysis for how the fight's going to go. Now, before we break down all these picks, please give me a like, give me a subscribe, give me a share, give me a comment. I would really appreciate it. Support your boy, Young Pastey, with this UFC. And secondly, I have to break down how we did last week very quickly. And I'd like to introduce a special guest. Z-Broom. Because we had a clean sweep. Yes, we did. We went undefeated, boys and girls. 11-0. How do we like that? Bets plus 2.202 units. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better night. We hit all of the picks and we hit all of the bets. So I hope you tailed. You could have done any single combo on my picks and you would have won money. So hey, now we move on to UFC 309. I'm super excited for all of these fights here. Not all of them, some of them. There are pretty good fights on this card, but there's also a couple that could have, maybe not been on a pay-per-view. Maybe, put on the Apex card or something like that. But our first fight of the night, we got John the Bones Jones, the current heavyweight champion, versus Stipe Miocic. My pick for this fight is John the Bones Jones. I mean, this is kind of like the last main event. It's stupid if you pick Stipe. I mean, the dude hasn't fought in 3 years. He's very old. He's 42 years old. John Jones is much younger than him. And John Jones is fucking John Jones, right? He is running through the competition. He has only one loss in his career. One loss, right? He just subbed Surreal Game last year. So, I wouldn't say that both of these guys are active. But, man, Stipe hasn't fought in 3 years. So it's tough for me or anybody to pick him, really. I don't know anybody on the Stipe side. But it should be a good main event. John Jones should get it done and taken care of in probably round 1 or round 2. Look for some props there. Do they have any out right now? Wow, look at this. Total rounds 1.5. That's where the line's set at. That's crazy. Anyway, we got John Jones for the pick. He's a super heavy favorite, minus 725. Now, when I wrote down the initial odds last week, not initial odds, but odds where they were at last week, John Jones is at minus 600, so he's gone up quite a bit. I really don't recommend you pick or bet any money on Stipe. John Jones is going to get this taken care of. Both of these guys are probably done after this fight, or should be. John Jones is afraid to take on Tom Aspinall, but that's a whole nother story and a whole nother conversation. John Jones is ultimately the pick, and we move on to the next fight. Super excited for the co-main here. We got Charles Olivera, the Bronx, versus Michael Iron Chandler. Charles Olivera minus 265. Michael Chandler at plus 215. My pick for this fight is Charles Olivera. Why is this a rematch? Why does Michael Chandler want to get his ass beaten again? All right, Charles has already done this once. I think Charles is the better striker. I think Charles has a huge advantage on the ground. Honestly, Michael Chandler is, he's tough, right? He's a well-known name. He's put on some good fights in the past. I'll give him credit for what he's done with his career, his name, and his UFC career, but this is not your fight, brother. You're 38. You're on the tail end of your career here. And, dude, I just don't understand why we have this rematch here. Olivera is going to get business taken care of again. That's the pick. That's the analysis. And we move on to the next fight. Okay. We got Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. I mean, Bo Nickal is obviously the pick here. I'm just... Why does the UFC love this guy? I mean, they just keep feeding him wins, right? I mean, look at this. Paul Craig, 36. I mean, he's a good vet, right? He's a good vet. He's put on some great fights in the past. But man, Bo Nickal obviously is going to get business taken care of here. I'm just tired of the UFC feeding this guy fights and wins. Like, I just really don't know how good he is. Because we've seen him in some suspect spots with some, low-tier competition. Bo Nickal is the pick ultimately, but man, like, not a fight I'm really excited or, really care about too much. I'm waiting for the UFC to give Bo Nickal a true test, a real opponent, and I'm looking probably to fade him at some point, but not here. Obviously not here. Minus 1,000 for Bo Nickal, plus 600 for Paul Craig. Probably something I would pass on with the betting side, but do as you wish. Minus 1,000, just too risky for me to put him in any sort of piece on anything I lay money on. We got Bo Nickal as the pick. Next fight. All right. We got Viviane Araujo versus Karine Silva. We got Vivi versus the Killer. I mean, with a nickname like that, I gotta go with the Killer. We got Karine Silva. My girl's been on a roll here. I believe she's on a 4 or 5 fight win streak in the UFC. 4 straight wins in the UFC, 3 of them by sub. Vivi is on the tail end of her career. This is a classic example of the UFC vet washed going down and the newcomer up and coming, rising, and they're just going to meet right here, right? One's going to keep going down, one's going to keep going up. Karine Silva is going to keep going up. She's the pick. She's a better striker. Ultimately, she's looking to get this fight to the ground and get a sub here. I mean, that is her specialty. I mean, I love my Brazilians. They're both Brazilian, right? They're both good at wrestling. But Karine Silva has more power. I mean, you're going to see how big she is in the octagon, too. She's going to be much larger than Vivi. And her wrestling is just much superior to hers at this point in her career. So Karine Silva is the pick. I would maybe put her in by sub or by decision if you're looking to, do some props or something like that. They think it's going to go over into, all 3 rounds here. I don't know. I might disagree. Under 2.5 might be a good look. You never know. Vivi could get subbed. But ultimately, Karine's the pick. And we move on to the next fight. All right. We got Mauricio Ruffy versus James Llontop. Huge and wide odds again. Minus 950 for Ruffy, plus 550 for Llontop. I can't do it. There's no way I can pick Llontop. Mauricio Ruffy is the pick. My dude is from the Fighting Nerds camp, and all of them are elite fighters. Okay? And you're going to give him some scrub like James Llontop? Come on now. Ruffy's going to piece this dude up. I might even see him getting a knockout here. I love my Brazilians. He's Brazilian. Just so much chalk to lay if you're looking to, bet on it. Minus 950 is crazy, but I would say it's justified. I would say he probably has a 95% chance to win this fight. I don't see James Llontop winning whatsoever, man. The competition he's gone up against has not been the greatest, and he hasn't looked the best against them. Again, Mauricio Ruffy is part of the Fighting Nerds camp. He's going up against all of these people in the camp that are elite competition. So that's who he's training and sparring with, right? So put him out in the octagon against the scrub. What do you think is going to happen? He's going to get pieced up. Ruffy is the pick. And we move on to the prelims. And this fight right here. is one I'm super excited about. Probably the fight I'm most excited about, to be honest with you. We got Jonathan Martinez, the Dragon, versus Marcus McGhee, the Maniac. Yo, we got Marcus McGhee in this spot. We got the Maniac, and let me tell you why. His boxing and his movement are elite. Okay, he looks so nice in the octagon. He's training with elite competition as well. Okay, the gym he's out of, MMA Lab. Yeah, so he's training with some elite competition there. Now I say his movement and his boxing are gonna, and his takedown threat, if he chooses to do that, are gonna win him this fight. Jonathan Martinez just came up against a fight with Jose Aldo, which I had him in that spot, and he couldn't get any takedowns on Jose. Jose pieced him up on the feet. And Jose's older. Jose Aldo's older. I mean, look, he's elite. You know, he's elite competition still, right? I know he's older, but man, Jose Aldo's still got it, and he's good. Mario Bautista, as we saw in that last fight, was, I mean, I'm not even going to get into that fight too much, but his takedown defense is solid, right? Martinez couldn't get him down. Marcus McGhee has solid takedown defense too, and honestly might even get his own takedown of himself. He's a little bit older. Martinez definitely has more UFC experience. Marcus McGhee just came into his UFC career a little bit later on due to some wild stuff happening in his life. But the takedown defense, the movement, the movement's crazy. He's constantly moving, switching positions, getting good strikes in. Marcus McGhee's a really, really good striker. One of my favorite fighters. He looks like one of those characters off of Toy Soldiers, if anyone's seen that movie. But again, elite competition, boxing, movement, threat of takedowns. Marcus McGhee has got this. That's my pick for the fight. Next fight, we have Chris Weidman versus Eryk, ya boy Anders. Plus 115 for Chris Weidman, minus 135 for Eryk Anders. My pick for this fight is Chris Weidman. I think he's a solid dog in this spot to pick. I think he's gone up against much more elite competition in his UFC career versus Eryk Anders. Chris Weidman's fought and become a champion in this fucking division. I mean, Eryk Anders has never been in that spot. I think that the odds are like this because Chris Weidman had that leg injury, which looked really nasty. It took him a couple of years to come back, and he's a little bit on the older side. But I mean, you could say the same for Eryk Anders, right? He's 37. I don't know the specific injuries he may have had to go through by his career, but everyone has to go through them at some point. Chris Weidman's was just nasty. His was nasty. But I think the activity, the volume, this is going to be a striking match to me. I don't see anything getting to the ground here. The activity, the volume, the experience, the grit of Chris Weidman is going to win him this fight. Eryk Anders isn't, I just feel like, up to his level. I feel like Chris Weidman's going to be fighting down. That's just my opinion here. Chris Weidman's a pick. Solid dog. We move on to the next fight. We got some more oldies here. UFC terms. We got Jim Miller, A10, versus Damon Jackson, the Leech. Jim Miller, the dog, at plus 130, minus 155 for Damon Jackson. And I'm going with another old man again. We got Jim Miller. We got A10. Now, both of these guys are coming off of some brutal losses where they took some heavy damage. Jim Miller got pieced up by Bobby Green. Damon Jackson got extremely beat up by Chepe. Honestly, I think Damon took more damage, and that was more recent than the Jim Miller fight that he had with Bobby Green. But I think Jim Miller has grit, and I think his boxing is better than Damon Jackson's. I mean, Damon Jackson could try and mix in the takedowns, but I don't think Jim Miller... I think Jim Miller has good takedown defense in this spot. And I mean, that's really Damon Jackson's path to victory, right? Is getting takedowns and holding Jim Miller to the ground. But I think Jim Miller can withstand them. I think that he can maybe take it to the cage, get in some dirty boxing. They're both tough motherfuckers. All right, I'll give them that. They're both tough as shit. But ultimately, I had to go with Jim Miller here. Damon took a lot of fucking damage the last fight, man. Like, a lot. Like, I don't even know how he's still walking. We move on. Won't spend too much time on this because Onama doesn't have an opponent right now. He had Lucas Almeida, who dropped out a few days ago. I don't know why they still have the odds up here. How are you going to give hypothetical odds to a random person? But David Onama was my original pick versus Lucas Almeida. And I would say whoever he's even going up against is, I'm probably still going to go with David Onama. Just given that it's going to be on super short notice and it's probably going to be some scrub or someone's UFC debut. You know what I mean? So when it comes to this fight, I probably would pick David Onama. Check my Twitter. I always post my picks and bets that are updated from my videos on there. So I'll throw in my pick on this fight when it ultimately comes out. But David Onama is the pick here, and we move on to the next fight. Oh man, Marcin Tybura versus Jhonata Diniz. We have nicknames, maybe? Tybura. Marcin Tybura. Vet versus newcomer. And my pick for this fight is Marcin Tybura. And I went back and forth with this so much. I originally picked Jhonata Diniz, but my reasoning for Marcin Tybura is because he's a vet in the UFC, right? Takedowns. That's the main path to victory here. He is not striking with Jhonata Diniz. Diniz will fuck him up all day, all right? Tybura will end up getting knocked out, even though he hasn't been knocked out for a while. And his losses are only against elite competition in this division. Maybe minus Serge, Pavlovich last fight. But Tybura's path to victory here is getting the takedowns, getting controlling him on the ground. Doing some boring heavyweight beating him up on the ground, kind of like the Romanov fight that we saw not last week, the week before that. The Romanov saw, it was boring, right? But all he needs to do is get him to the ground and beat him up and exhaust him, and that's his path to victory, and that's how I see this going. Even though Diniz did get a win over Carl Williams is not as experienced as Tybura. I think Tybura has better ground control than Carl Williams had. Because Carl Williams just is a constant takedown, right? People kept getting back up on him. Tybura will just fucking lay on you, right? He's a big boy. Even though Diniz is too, but he's just like big boned too. We got Tybura in the fight. And we move on to probably the worst fight of the night. We have Gall versus Ramiz Brahimaj. I mean, fucking flip a coin if you want to on this fight. It's not my favorite. This is what I was saying in the intro. This fight right here is garbage. The pick is Ramiz Brahimaj. My reason being is Gall is trash. Ramiz Brahimaj isn't any better, but Gall is trash. He is going to be bigger than Ramiz. I think Ramiz will be able to take him down and ultimately has the better striking than Gall. And Gall's gas tank is trash too. He's going to gas out. So that's why I picked Ramiz. But this is a stay away. This is my do not bet alarm. This is please just change the channel. I mean, I'm not interested in watching this fight really whatsoever. Had to make a pick on it. So the pick is Ramiz. Gall's trash. I mean, look at this dude. 7-6 is your record, bro. I mean, and 10-5. I mean, that's okay. I mean, that looks okay. But 7-6, bro. And you're not winning against good people, and you're losing against not so good people either. Watch him end up winning. Be crazy. Next fight, we got Bassil Hafez, the Habibi, versus Oban Elliot, the Welsh gangster. Hafez at plus 170. Oban Elliot at 2-1 favorite now. He was at minus 155 a week ago. Okay. My pick for the fight is the Welsh Gangster. We got Oban Elliot. I think he looked really good in his last fight against Preston Parsons. Now, Bassil Havez's last fight was against Mickey Gall. And, I mean, I just talked about how bad he was. I really wouldn't put any stock into that fight. Don't put any oomph into that fight. And his first fight was against Jack Della Maddalena. And look, I'll give him credit. He put on a hard fight against Jack Della. He lost. He did. But it was a hard-fought fight. So, I mean, he's going to come out crazy. He comes out wild. And I feel like that's his downfall, is he uses too much energy in the first round. And then, I mean, I feel like Oban Elliott's going to be able to withstand that. Maybe even piece him up if he comes in too wild. Get a crazy knockout or something. But I do see this fight going 3 rounds. I do see Oban Elliott. He's a good technical striker and can mix in a takedown or two if he really needs it. Bassil Hafez just, I don't know, his style is so wild. He's just wild. Fighter IQ is not the best. That's why I say he's wild. I bet you the odds here, they say over 2.5. Minus 270. That's why I figured 2. That's why I say Elliot by decision. Elliot by knockout too. But we got the Welsh Gangster. Minus 200. See, he's not even money lineable now. I was saying minus 155 a week ago. That was actually money lineable, but minus 200 isn't now. Maybe a good parlay piece. And we have the last fight? There might be some fights added to this. I don't know. Anyway, the last fight on the card, we got Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Mora. Ronda. Okay. Hardy, the minus 160 favorite, plus 135 for Eduarda. I actually have the underdog here. I have Eduarda Mora. I think that her wrestling and, I mean, her striking is okay. If this is a stand-up match, Hardy's going to piece her up all day, but I feel like Eduarda Mora's wrestling is better than Hardy. He's going to be able to take her down to the ground and control her and get some pitter-patter ground and pound enough to make, the refs not stand him up. Mora has a gas tank issue, and that's what really concerns me because you can't be getting gassed out against a striker. They're just going to piece you up and eventually knock you out. So it's very, very crucial that she gets this fight to the ground early and is able to control her. That way she can retain her energy throughout the fight. I mean, obviously, if you're on top controlling, you're using much less energy than the person on the bottom trying to get up and constantly, getting beat up. So, Mora is the pick. What do they say for these? Over 2.5 minus 340? I'd say that's probable. But Mora is the pick. Now, those are all the fights on the card, guys. So, those are all my picks here. I appreciate you getting this far into the video. Now, I do have a couple of channel updates to provide. I will now be doing a separate bets video. So, this is just the picks video. We'll be doing separate bets videos every single Wednesday. So, expect that. The bets will be coming out on Wednesday. I already have them put in. And I'll release them out on Wednesday. So that's when they're coming out. But again, if you made it this far, I appreciate your support. Throw me a like, throw me a comment, throw me a share, throw me a subscribe. I really appreciate it. It goes a long way. Support your boy, Young Pastey. I'm looking to bring out another broom next week. You never know. So, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.